Hi, everyone. So we're going to get started. Thanks for coming out and choosing to spend your Saturday night with us. This is Emmy. She's a co-host. I can't see what she's doing. Okay. So I'm Lynn Connor. I'm the person behind Lost Lit, and we're a literary arts space that hosts writing workshops and collaborates with Grumpy Bert to put on arts events like this. And I just wanted to do this Mother's Day reading because typically the whole month of May is really hard for me since my mom died. But now that I'm a new mom and I'm about to celebrate my first Mother's Day, I thought it was time to honor the grief and loss of mothers who are no longer with us, but also acknowledge how hard mothering can actually be. Not the joys. We're not going to talk about joy tonight, so. But I'm really thrilled to have 12 writers with me. It will be 13. And we're going to share creative nonfiction stories, all creative nonfiction. So without delay, let's get started. So the first up is Marcia Howard. Marcia took my Get Lit workshop last winter, and she told me that she was a mom to a toddler and was finally returning back to life. So when I found out I was pregnant, we did a lot of baby talking. And when I put this reading together, I kind of insisted that she had to read. So, because her writing is really, really good. So, her bio, Marcia is a writer and video producer currently residing in Brooklyn with a tiny dude and her husband. She spends most of her time trying not to be one of those cliched moms who talk about wine o'clock all the time and mostly fails. Please help me welcome Marcia to the stage.
Hello. Okay, so I have two pieces. They're fairly short, so this will be very quick. The Doctors. It always begins the same way. During the first episode of the first season, we're introduced to the characters, their personalities, their motivations. In this case, they're doctors, or almost doctors, at a fictitious Seattle hospital. They're all thin and good-looking and mostly white. They've all had to overcome extraordinary odds to be there. There is the never quite good enough daughter of a famous doctor, the model who put herself through med school by posing for lingerie ads, the rude overachiever, the rude underachiever, and the middle of the roader who tries but never quite succeeds. They're not real, of course. They're not even attempting reality. In this world, each episode will bring on a bigger and bigger medical emergency. The boy impaled on a tree, a woman who broke her hips during sex, the rare skin disease, malignant hypothermia, Kawasaki disease, Moyamoya syndrome, the tumors, the many, many, many tumors, almost always inoperable, but somehow these young and sexy doctors always find a way. They're miracle workers. I watch them all day when the baby is napping, when the baby is nursing, when the baby is awake and cooing sweetly at me. The doctors are always in the background, sometimes in a passionate embrace, often saving lives and occasionally dying. And they become not quite an obsession, but something I can't look away from. I describe them in minute detail. They're my new friends, my coworkers, and most days, my only adult contact. Did I tell you about the shooting at the hospital? I say, as my husband and I walk the baby down the block one evening after he returns from work. I describe the shooter, a disgruntled husband of a former patient who died at the hands of one of the sexy doctors. I sometimes feel myself losing grip on reality. He shot the doctor on the big sky bridge. You know, the one with the amazing hair. 40 minutes have gone by, and I've gone into a scene-by-scene breakdown of the episode. In between making sure the baby is warm, that the baby has enough blankets, but not so many that he could suffocate in a stroller, not so many that he might overheat. I check him often, instinctively, anxiously, as we walk. I've heard that you should find something relaxing to do while you pump to stimulate milk production. I've heard that many mothers stare at photos of their babies. I hate pumping. Worrying that there isn't enough milk, worrying that the baby being the 10th percentile is my fault. And so instead of staring at him while I pump, I watch the doctors. The blonde one who modeled lingerie, hallucinating her dead lover because, of course, she has, wait for it, a giant inoperable tumor. I've taken to sleeping with the doctors. Since the night after my cat sounded like a burglar, which is funny when you say it, because, cat burglar, but not so funny when it happened. And I screamed and woke the baby and my husband, and afterwards, while lying in the dark, heart beating fast, I watched. By the time I'd heard of postpartum anxiety, depression, I was more familiar with that, but postpartum anxiety was fairly new to me. And by the time I'd even thought to reach out to a therapist, it was she who told me, too late, to diagnose as postpartum, almost exactly 12 months since the birth of my son and 11 seasons, measured out in hours later. The doctors may not have saved my life, but they carried me through that first season of parenthood. I don't watch anymore. The storyline with the rude underachiever, now pediatric superstar, really bums me out. But I'm, if not cured, then better than I was before I found them. Okay. Cigarettes and boyfriends. We're sitting in the backyard of Doris on Franklin Avenue, Jennifer and I, an old friend, well, oldish friend, who does not now and might not ever want kids. It's a warm night, the first one like it, so we've opted to sit outside, our arms bare, helmed on each side by Brooklyners that have the exact same bright idea as us. It's one of my first few nights out, and though I'm exhausted, sleep deprived, in all the ways you hear new parents talk about, and some of the ones you don't, lest they scare off their childless friends, especially the ones who kind of don't want kids anyway. And I'm buzzing from my second glass of wine. Have a cigarette, Jen says, and this is why I love her. Because she never asks, did you quit smoking? She just assumes, because I've always smoked, as long as I've known her, because I've always said yes, that I will this time, that I am the self that I was before I made another human, and so I say yes. So how are you, she asks. I don't even know, I say after the first pleasurable, terrible drag. I mean, I'm really ready to go back to work. I feel really lucky that I've gotten to spend so much time with him, I say, because you always have to say you feel really, really lucky for the luxury of staying home, especially when you're not doing it because you can't afford otherwise, when a lot of women don't have that luxury. But, I say, I feel like I'm disappearing. Like the me that I am on the inside and the me that I am on the outside in the world are so separate they're almost unrelated. I sound stupid. Jen doesn't say that. She just nods and says, that's why I'm not even sure I want to have kids. Don't, I say. Just don't ever have kids. You can borrow mine. He's the best. Sounds like it, she says. And we both laugh. John hit me up last week, she says. Jen typically assumes I remember all the guys she's dated. There haven't been that many, but they're all interchangeable and a blur to me now. I pretend to remember. First time since Max Fish. God, can you believe it's closed? He hits me up on Facebook like, what's up? Just completely out of the blue. I laugh because though I don't remember John, I remember the idea of John's. And, there suddenly and then not. My new guy, he's 2, more permanent than all the Johns so far. Not nearly as fun to dish about over cocktails, but the best and the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. And of course, there really are 2 me's now. There's the me before and the me after, and they're the same, but they're also separate, that they're almost unrelated.
Okay, next we have Catherine Jerkovich. Catherine signed up for my Get Lit workshop over a year ago, and her writing is electric and raw, and she is also a really a good feedback giver. So this is her official bio. Catherine is from Arlington, Virginia. She is obsessed with books, with her wife Bren and her Chihuahua Pavarotti, not necessarily in that order. Let's give a big round of applause for Catherine.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. A story dimly recalled from long ago. My parents first dating, out walking in a field. My father steps into a nest of yellow jackets. Hundreds of stings, and a few short months later, a shotgun wedding. No photos, no witnesses. I was a breech baby. The day after I was forcibly removed from my hiding place by cesarean, my Aunt Kate called the hospital to ask how her sister was feeling. Like I've been hit by a Mack truck, my mother said. She was breathless to get home to her cigarettes, wound healing be damned. Like Macbeth's unstoppable adversary, I was not of woman born. Having been from my mother's womb untimely ripped, should I not also enjoy an unearthly power to destroy my enemies? Destroying myself comes so much more naturally. After my mother is gone, felled at 42, albeit indirectly, by her own chain-smoking hand, Dad starts putting me on a plane to Florida in the summers to visit Aunt Kate. She and Uncle Zane have 2 Cocker Spaniels they dote on, a silly blonde named Bounce, and her sober chocolate gentleman friend, Jojo. Aunt Kate and I install ourselves at the dining room table and play canasta or assemble jigsaw puzzles for hours upon hours, days turning into weeks while I shiver in the blasting air conditioning, and Aunt Kate, face red, sweats over her bottomless glass of iced tea. Sometimes we sit in the Florida room overlooking the canal at the back of the house, blinds drawn against the afternoon sun, and watch Gone with the Wind or South Pacific, the dogs curled up between us on the sofa, ice cubes clinking as Aunt Kate raises her glass again and again, pinky finger lifted, lips pursed daintily as she sips. I'm 7 years old. Late afternoons, with Uncle Zane on his way home from the office, we move to the kitchen, where Aunt Kate selects a flavor of hamburger helper from the pantry, and we set to work preparing a home-cooked meal for her returning warrior. In the evenings, we talk genealogy. Aunt Kate produces hand-drawn family trees, tells me what she knows about her parents and her parents' parents, and on down the line back to Scotland and France until she loses the thread. Her grandmother, my Nana, is 100 years old and lives alone in a retirement village near Boynton Beach. She sends me a card at Christmas every year. Nana's daughter, my grandmother, was a notorious booze hound whose death from cirrhosis followed a string of incidents, including the loss of a twin pregnancy after a drunken fall from a step stool in the kitchen. That last part can't be true. Even if it were, Aunt Kate would never tell me such lurid details about her own mother. Or rather, I should say, I don't know if it's true or not. It's a story that's been lodged there in my memory since about this time, 8 or 9 years of age, recently motherless, flying around the country as an unaccompanied minor on school breaks so Dad could keep going to work and living a semi-normal life for a few months out of the year. Regardless, my grandmother's bouts of self-destruction form the central motif of her legend in my mind. Once I discover that grown-ups lie and children misinterpret and misremember even the truths, I have no idea what to make of this woman who was long gone by the time I was born. There's no one left to ask now. The summer that I'm 9, Aunt Kate is expecting her first baby. She's 3 months or so from her due date, and she takes me along to her increasingly frequent checkups at the OBGYN's office. The first time we went, a nurse took vitals and sent us on our way. But today we're in a darkened room. Aunt Kate laid out like a cadaver on the table under a paper sheet. The doctor enters, pulls down the sheet, squirts a puddle of clear, goopy stuff on the huge belly. As he slides his instrument over the sloping mound, the sheet shifts farther, and a thatch of bristly hair appears against her lower abdomen, wild against the white dimpled flesh like raw chicken skin. The bristles are darker than the fine strawberry strands on her head, and improbably dense. A fat worm squirms in my throat, and I look away until the lights come on and I hear the paper sheet rustle back into place. When I return the following summer, a squalling pink blob has taken over, and Bounce and Jojo have been demoted to the rank of nuisance. There are no more marathon card games or chats about family history. My yearly visits become sporadic and short. I never graduated from calling her mommy to mom. By the time I was 10, I was embarrassed for my friends to hear me refer to her in my stunted, childish way, and by 12, I couldn't even speak of her with Dad. I didn't know what to call her. I still don't. Cancer and addiction are in my blood. Maybe not literally, at least not yet. But they're imprinted on my DNA as a potentiality, the rush towards annihilation of the host and ultimately the self. Since childhood, this knowledge has held me in a perpetual state of conflict between swallowing all the pleasure, devouring it greedily while I can, and indulging the nihilistic apathy that says, I'll be dead in the blink of an eye, and so will you. So why bother? Fuck it all. These days I have two ambitions: to preserve something of myself in words and to take the last ragged fragments of my bloodline to the grave with me. If I am an eerie, prophecy-proof anomaly by medieval standards, my own potential offspring are true freaks of medical technology, which is saying something in this age of human ears sprouting from the backs of mice and synthetic meat grown in petri dishes. Currently, two little alien things lie dormant in a freezer in Midtown, awaiting a host. Embryos built from my masculine-presenting wife's hormone-injected eggs and the extensively washed and tested sperm of an anonymous donor we selected from the internet for his ethnicity, his high melanin, and his avowed passion for ceviche. I imagine that my slumbering gabies represent an advance to an uncanny new level of invulnerability. Engineered seedless, strap-on sproutlings, industrial innocence, blessedly uncontaminated by my ruinous genetic material. The greatest gift I can give them is nothing of myself.
Okay, up next is Amanda Hirsch. Amanda submitted to the call for submissions for this reading, and her story couldn't be more perfect for the vague idea of what I wanted to do tonight. So I'm really glad she said yes. Her bio is Amanda Hirsch is a writer and improv actress. She is the author of Feeling My Way, Finding Motherhood Without Losing Myself, a book inspired by the blog post she wrote during pregnancy and her daughter's first year of life. Speaking of blogs, Amanda has one called Having It Alt, where she chronicles her efforts to live authentically. About once a month, she and her husband hire a babysitter and perform a two-person improv show called Till Death, a comedy show about marriage. In conclusion, Amanda's vices include overindulging in dark chocolate and avoiding meditation. Amy Poehler is her spirit animal. Please welcome Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I didn't realize how much higher than you. I feel like I'm like towering over you. I'm 5'2", so I'm not used to that sensation. So these are a couple of curated excerpts from my book that Lynn mentioned. Anticipating Motherhood, written on March 3rd, 2012, when I was 7 months pregnant. I'm not afraid of being a parent. I'm afraid of being a douchebag. It's true. I'm ready to be a mother. In fact, at week 31 of this pregnancy, I feel I already am a mother. I talk to her, the baby, let's call her the Hirschling. I feel her moving inside me. She's there, she exists, and by virtue of that, I exist as a mother. To be clear, I realize there's so much more to motherhood that I have yet to discover, but I feel that I've assumed the role, even if it's one I will continue to discover new facets of, essentially for the rest of my life. Motherhood doesn't scare me. I am ready to hold her, to care for her, to love her. I already love her. While I know I'm in for a slew of feelings I couldn't possibly anticipate, I also know deep in my bones that motherhood is a role that will come naturally to me. It feels like part of my identity that's been dormant, waiting, grayed out, ready for me to turn on. Lately, it feels like that switch has been flicked. What scares me, terrifies me really, is what motherhood will do to the rest of my life. I don't want mommy to overwhelm the rest of my identity. While I expect to love my daughter in profound and indescribable ways, and in some ways I already do, I don't want to become that person whose entire internal and external life is focused 1000% on my child. I want having a child to be an additive experience to expand our lives, not narrow them. One of improv's fundamental building blocks is the concept of yes and. To build a scene with someone, you need to agree with the information your partner establishes. For example, we're on the moon. Then you need to expand it. We're on the moon, and you're Richard Nixon, and I'm Cher. It can be tempting to disagree. No, we're on Jupiter. But it rarely makes the scene better. To be clear, characters can disagree. I love life on the moon. I miss Earth. But the actors should establish the reality of the scene as quickly as possible, and that requires agreement. And for anything to happen in the scene, they need to go beyond simple agreement and add new information. Hence, yes, and. Why do I bother explaining this? Well, improv is the lens through which Jordan and I see so much of life. And last weekend, when I was sharing my fears, Jordan reassured me, Amanda, this baby, she is the and to our yes. She is expanding our scene. I read somewhere that once you have a child, there are 3 key relationships to nurture: husband and wife, mother and child, and father and child. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'd add our relationships with ourselves, give me alone time or give me death. I'd also add our relationship as a threesome, well, foursome if you count our dog Cosmo, which of course you should. So where does the fear come in? I guess I'm mostly afraid of imbalance, of inattention to any one of those relationships. I'm lucky that so many of my friends have already had kids and I can learn from their experiences, but this is our own path to carve, and it's intimidating. As excited as I am to have her join us, I'm just terrified, and I can't help it, about how her arrival will throw things out of whack. Parenthood is about letting go. I've seen my friends learn that lesson, and I believe it to be true. So I know the task ahead of me is to let go of fears, let go of expectations, and just experience this journey as it unfolds. Unfortunately, patience is not my strong suit, and my hormones are out of whack. Pregnancy does that to you, in case you hadn't heard. And so here I sit, excited, maternal feeling, terrified, and hopeful. Hopeful about a vision that I have where Jordan is making music and I'm writing, and our home is filled with friends and family and laughter, and with our little baby girl. Hopeful about our journey to help her discover this world and who she is within it, and to live creative and fulfilling lives along the way. Wish us luck. This next selection is called Droplet, and I wrote it on June 22nd, 2012, as the mother to a 1-month-old. People have been asking me to start blogging again, and I'm flattered, but what do you blog about after giving birth? The way my skin stretched in ways I never thought it could, and out she came? Sorry if that grosses you out. The way my heart has stretched in ways I never thought it could, doing flip-flops and bungee jumps, stretching wide, wider. The way I feel like Bessie the cow, pumping milk from my teats in between breastfeeding sessions. The way I can't believe I'm a parent, posting baby pictures to Facebook, reading books about developing your child's sleep habits. Oh my God, this is so weird. Learning how to work a stroller, a swing, a bouncy seat, and learning how to incorporate these objects into my home, how to incorporate her things into my home. I have this picture of myself. Actually, it's more of an impression. I'm thriving professionally, I'm in great physical shape, and we have a happy family life. I know we'll get there, but for now, it's like I'm in a vortex, an other world, another dimension, and the glass between this world and yours is mottled, like I'm looking up from underwater. But that makes it sound like I'm drowning, and instead I feel like I'm floating, suspended, like a tiny drop of water in the ocean, crystallizing a moment, capturing the sun. I'm learning to know her cries, her language. She's calling to me now, and off I go. And this last excerpt from the book is called Re-Inhabiting My Life, written July 15th, 2012, when I was mother to a 2-month-old. I want her. Right now, she's downstairs with Jordan, and I just want to hold her to my chest. I want everything to be the same. I want to have luxurious stretches of time alone with Jordan and alone with myself. I want to perform improv. I want to be a young-ish couple, unencumbered, out in the world. And yet, I want everything to be different. I have a baby, for God's sake. Shouldn't the heavens open? The early weeks were so much easier than this in-between, this straddling the old and the new, the familiar and the alien, as I inch towards re-inhabiting my life beyond having a baby. We've arranged for daycare starting in August when I return to work. Someone else will be spending more time with my baby daughter than I will. I know a big part of being a good mother is letting go, but this is too much, too soon. And yet, the alternative, me as full-time caregiver, is no good. First, I believe firmly that I need to feed the parts of myself other than mother, the artist in me, the part of me that engages with the world, not just with my daughter, in order to be the best mother to her possible. An isolated life of me and her would not yield the kind of relationship I want for us. Second, I honestly don't have the stamina for full-time childcare. Caring for her fills me up, sure, but it also drains me down intensely. These days, life is a special brew of serenity and insanity that leaves me feeling dumb and spent. Sure, I could rally to the role of full-time caregiver if I had to, but I don't think it would result in a thriving version of Amanda. And I want to thrive for both of our sakes. And so, I'm readying myself for a major rebalancing, one that makes caring for my baby part of my life rather than my entire life. And my heart is like taffy, pulled in opposing directions, sticky, stuck. Be with her more, reclaim your life, integrate her into your life. How do you do that? How do you integrate something so profound? How do you integrate a person you made who grew inside your body? This isn't like making room in your schedule for tap dancing lessons. It feels like I've been on vacation and I'm just coming back to a dusty old house that's been sitting dormant, and that house is life as I know it. My suitcases are in the hallway. There's so much to unpack. I pick up objects sitting around the rooms and remember them like a faraway dream. I yearn for them and reject them at the same time. All I know is that I want everything. I want more of her, more of Jordan, more art, more yoga, more space, more closeness, more professional life, more magical maternal moments, and sleep. I definitely want more sleep. I want it all. The thing is, I've always wanted it all. I've always been greedy with my desires, but never before have I felt this sensation inside of me of physically being pulled in opposite directions. Boiled down, it's simple. I want the impossible. I want to be with her all the time, and I want to be apart from her sometimes. Beep boop, does not compute. So, I'll unpack my suitcases. I'll wipe down the furniture lovingly till it's just like new, but with all the memories and history intact. I'll throw the windows open wide and let in some fresh air, and then I'll snuggle in the corner with my daughter, creating new memories, living a new life together. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Siobhan Bell. Siobhan answered the call for submissions, and she recently took my mother loss writing workshop that was specifically targeted for motherless daughters. So I've really enjoyed getting to know her. This is her bio. Siobhan Bell is a freelance writer and digital content producer who was raised in the Bronx and currently lives in Harlem with her cat, Snickers. She has a passion for listening to people's stories and sharing spaces with communities that amplify marginalized voices. When she's not overthinking about what it means to be a human, she enjoys crafting, trying new recipes, practicing her downward-facing dog, and complaining about growing up. Let's give it up for Siobhan.
I hate adulting. That's not good. Hi, how are you? Pause, rewind, stop, play. Pause, rewind, stop, play. I was in the middle of giving meticulous orders to my grandmother's VCR, which was covered in a blanket of dust. Right hand on right hip, I furrowed my eyebrows. There were men in green football uniforms tackling each other on the 32-inch screen in front of me, although the VHS tape inside the VCR is clearly labeled Christmas 1995. It's written in blue ink on a white address label in my mom's handwriting. And I know it's my mom's handwriting because of the way she wrote the number 5 and how it always looked like an S. My fist met the VCR, but I wanted nothing more than my hand to instead be a magic wand. My grandmother just accidentally recorded over one of only 2 tapes I owned of my late mother. I felt sick to my stomach, like the proof I had that my mom was once here was suddenly ripped away from me. Hot tears blinded me, and there was a huge lump gripping my throat, threatening to betray my stoic face, but
All I could do was curse myself for not transferring my tape to DVD, or better yet, the cloud, which I was always meaning to get around to one day. There was no use in dwelling on something I couldn't change, but I was suddenly overcome with so much jealousy over all the baby photos and videos on social media that I scrolled through and double tapped on a daily basis. At least they would have their precious childhood memories forever. Fortunately, it took me all of 5 minutes to come to my senses. I knew I didn't need a tape to remind me how hardworking my single mother was and how she always made the holidays amazing. Even though she forgot to eat the slightly burnt and overly thick oatmeal cookies I left out for Santa that one night, and I started to seriously doubt his existence. We didn't have the best tree. It was pretty awful and sparse, but she still made sure to decorate it every year with gold garland, white glass ornaments, and a huge blinking star on top. I was an only child, so naturally I was the epitome of spoiled, and one of the best things about Christmas was not sharing my toys. I'll never forget the box of 96 Crayola crayons that came with the built-in sharpener and such original colors like Tickle Me Pink, Granny Smith Apple, and what easily became my favorite shade of orange, macaroni and cheese. With my eyes closed, I can almost picture my pink vanity set adorned with bright lights all around the mirror and hidden drawers to hold my most prized possession, root beer flavored lip smacker gloss, classic 90s girl essentials. Plus, she'd always let me play with her blue mood lipstick that changed into a raspberry shade once applied to the lips. It was magical. Of course, there was also that Baby Alive doll with the mechanical mouth that pooped its diaper when fed from the included food packets. And it was at that point that I mentally scratched pediatrician from my list of careers to choose from as an adult, but still, I loved it. Easy bake ovens, jewelry making kits, Barbie dolls portrayed with every occupation imaginable. I was granted all these things and more, even though when it came to her special day, Mother's Day, I made a popsicle stick jewelry box or a Fawcett picture frame every single year. And each time I gave it to her, she'd act like she never saw it coming and would appreciate the effort I put into gluing 100 sticks together or choosing the perfectly cold rotini. So although that lost tape might help jog my memory, I keep my mother's spirit alive in me, where it will always be burning bright. And if I listen closely, I can still hear her laugh in my heart. I choose to cook the pasta I have in my own cupboards now, but nonetheless, happy Mother's Day, Mom. Thank you.
Up next is Nadia Kushotkar. Nadia is my best friend since 7th grade. And we've known each other, or we've been in each other's weddings. And when I found out I was pregnant, she was actually the first person I told before my husband. She's been my mommy guru through the pregnancy, and Emmy and I wouldn't be here without her. So, of course, I begged her to be in this reading. So, here is her bio. Nadia lives in Long Island City with her husband, Kareem, and 2 boys, Eli and Issa. She is a stay-at-home mom primarily, but also works per diem as a social worker. She doesn't consider herself a writer, and this is the first story she has written, so go easy on her. She would like to thank Lynn for her help and support and for giving her this opportunity. Please give a round of applause for Nadia.
Hi. Hi. I can't really pinpoint when I knew I wanted to be a mother. I grew up in New Jersey to Pakistani parents, but I don't remember being one of those young girls at age 4 or 5 saying I want to be a mommy. I do remember 2 friends and I formed CPS Productions in Mrs. Sylvester's 10th grade English class. We used to make skits for class projects based on books that we read. In a skit about the American dream, we created a scene where we look at our future selves. I was married and a mother to 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. I always thought having 4 kids was the ideal. My journey to motherhood started 2 years after getting married. I was 28 years old at the time. For some reason, I always had it in my head that I wanted to have my first kid before the age of 30. I don't really know where this idea came from. In Pakistani culture, women tend to get married early, even though I was considered old at 26, and have kids pretty soon after getting married, so maybe I was unknowingly influenced by this expectation. But nonetheless, I was ready to make it a reality. I figured if we start trying to conceive in 2006, I would have the baby before my big 3-0 in August 2007. I tackled any difficult situation like my dad always taught me through knowledge gathering and education. I concluded that it would take us about 6 months to conceive. Wrong. I got pregnant in early August within the first month of trying. Even though we were planning, it took us a bit by surprise. We even did 3 pregnancies tests to make sure, and I made my husband Kareem go out and buy the tests where you can read the words pregnant and not pregnant, just so I knew there was no mistake. Sure enough, I was pregnant, and I thought, wow, that was easy. We had already planned a 2.5-week trip to Southeast Asia at the end of the month, and I would only be about 5 weeks pregnant at the time. Since there is no chapter about traveling to Asia and what to expect when you're expecting, I started to feel a little nervous. We made a doctor's appointment early on just to make sure everything was all good before we left for the trip. The doc confirmed once again with a blood test that I was indeed pregnant. It's so crazy how hearing those words or seeing the test results can really change things instantly. I started thinking all baby stuff, like getting a nursery together and buying all these cute little baby clothes. It was like being 10 years old again right before our Eid holiday. The due date was May of 2007, the best weather month in New York City and right around Mother's Day. It couldn't be more perfect if I planned it. We returned from our trip in early September with no issues. I must admit I was a bit upset about not being too adventurous in eating all the street food in Bangkok or the crabs in Singapore, but I didn't want to take any chances of harming the baby. We go back to see Dr. Wong on September 21st to hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time. We go into the exam room and Dr. Wong gets the ultrasound machine out and attaches it to my belly. We are anxiously staring at the monitor, waiting to hear our baby. She then says, "I'm sorry, I can't find the heartbeat." Here I am, so naive, I just thought she meant she couldn't find it today, as in it was too early. So I said, okay, maybe at the next appointment. This is when she clarified by stating that there will not be a heartbeat. Her words sunk in like a rock. I had miscarried the baby. The baby was 9 weeks at the time. I had no clue that something like this could happen. I always thought that miscarriage meant bleeding and cramping, and since I didn't have any of those symptoms, I didn't realize that there were other ways that women can miscarry. I later learned that this is what doctors call a missed miscarriage or spontaneous abortion. I just sobbed. Kareem put his arms around me and we hugged each other tightly, but at that point, nothing could take away the pain that I felt. And in one instant again, your life changes immediately. I remember feeling so many emotions during that time. I was angry at the whole situation and started playing the victim and thinking, why me? There was also an overwhelming feeling of sadness at the same time. I had a hard time talking about it to anyone. The miscarriage happened right around the time of my 11-year high school reunion. I thought of canceling, but Kareem insisted that we go as planned. We had planned to make a night of it with my 2 best friends, Lynn and Shayla, and Kareem thought it would be a good idea to spend time with friends. But I couldn't even talk to Lynn and Shayla about the miscarriage or the pain and sadness I was feeling. I was afraid of crying and breaking down about it, so it was easier to keep it to myself. I also felt guilty about it and thought if I did things differently, maybe I wouldn't have miscarried. My family was trying to be supportive, but up until that time, we never had to deal with death or grief in our family. Regardless of their supportive words and thoughts, I wasn't able to see anything positive about the situation. Since I didn't miscarry naturally, we were given the option to have a D&C procedure. We opted for this since it gave us the opportunity to do genetic testing to determine if there was any abnormalities that caused the miscarriage. It turns out that the baby had an extra chromosome, and the doctor said it was the body's way of not bringing an unhealthy baby into the world. We also found out through the test that it was a baby girl. For the next few months, I had a hard time accepting the reality. I'm not an extremely religious person, but I started feeling angry at God. I questioned why me and started thinking about all the things I did wrong to cause this to happen. I started reading about miscarriages in hopes of trying to find some answers or closure. I purchased a bracelet from a website devoted to miscarried babies. I named a star after our baby girl, but I still couldn't find that peace. A lot of my friends and family were having babies around the time, and it was hard for me to really be happy for them. I can think of just 4 friends off the top of my head. Moni, Amina, Uzma were all having girls, and my friend Neela was having a boy. I even had to stop attending some of the baby showers because it was just too difficult. I hated attending family functions or community events because it's typical in Pakistani culture for aunties to be nosy and question why I'm not pregnant yet. I couldn't bear hearing that question or trying to explain my situation, so I just avoided those get-togethers at all costs. One weekend we were in New Jersey visiting my parents, and my mom was making palak gosht, one of my favorite dishes. I got upset at her, and when she said that I got upset at her when she said that we can always try again and that it was meant to be because God knows best. I was crying and asked her if she ever had a miscarriage. When she said no, I told her she would never understand what I was dealing with. How could she tell me it was for the best when she had no idea what I'm feeling or going through? I was angry even at Kareem, who seemed to be over it, and I couldn't understand how. But after a few months, I was able to move on. I don't think you ever get over it, but I was able to try again. So in January of 2007, we started our baby making once again. I assumed that because it happened so quickly the first time around, that it would be the same the second time too. Wrong again. It was now June 2007, and we had tried for 6 months with no success. We decided to go to an infertility specialist who told us to try again for another 6 months, and if no luck, then to come back. Sure enough, a year had passed and we were back in her office. She did all this testing on us only to tell us that everything was normal and we had what was called unexplained infertility. I don't even know what that means. So there I was, researching again, trying to understand what it was and what caused it, since I was able to get pregnant naturally before. I started getting a little crazy, scouring websites, reading blogs day and night. I would not let go until I had a satisfactory answer. I learned, though, that there was no answer. I still do not know to this day what changed in my body that caused me not to conceive naturally after my miscarriage. It was 3 years of going to countless appointments at the infertility clinic, trying different procedures and medications, running further tests, and even taking a break from it all and going on vacation as the doctor suggested, because she thought maybe if I was less stressed, things would happen naturally. No such luck. It was March of 2010 that we decided to do IVF. This was basically our last hope to get pregnant. Here's the lowdown on IVF. Big needle injections, countless doctor appointments, eggs out and in, and a lot of pain. You then go to the clinic for a pregnancy blood test in the morning, and they call you that afternoon with the results. I remember getting that phone call but not being able to answer it because I was too nervous to hear the results. I waited until the voicemail came through and then called Kareem. I checked my voicemail, and great news, I was pregnant. It was April 2010, 4 long years after my last pregnancy. And in that instant again, our lives had changed. The first few months of the pregnancy were particularly scary, and I worried about miscarriage constantly. I remember anxiously sitting in the IVF clinic on my last day there, thinking that the doctor was going to tell me that the baby had no heartbeat. I was scarred from the miscarriage and expected to hear the same news. I kid you not, throughout my whole pregnancy, even at the very last doctor's appointment, I feared the doctor was going to tell me that there was no heartbeat. The rest of the pregnant went pretty smoothly, minus the severe all-day sickness, until one of my last doctor appointments before giving birth. The baby was due January 19, 2011, and there I was in the doctor's office on January 21st, still pregnant. At the appointment, they found that I had high blood pressure and something in my urine, which was the first time throughout the whole pregnancy. And since I was past my due date, they sent me to the hospital to be monitored. I was admitted that Friday morning, and they started the induction process. After 12 hours, the doctor came in to talk to me about the possibility of having a C-section since I was not dilating. I always assumed that I would deliver vaginally, so I never even thought about the idea of a C-section, but it looked like we had no choice. We accepted our fate, but then got thrown in for a loop when the baby's heartbeat became irregular due to a fever that I developed a little after 2 a.m. Because of that, we had an emergency C-section and things started moving lightning fast. My baby boy, Elijah, was born on Sunday, January 23rd, 2011. The nurse brought him over to me and said, "Technically, I shouldn't be doing this, but I just wanted you to see your baby boy before they whisk him away to the nursery." It wasn't the NICU, but not the normal nursery either. I wasn't able to hold him on my chest or start breastfeeding right away. Elijah was born at 2:53 a.m., and I wasn't able to hold him until that night around 7:30 p.m. I didn't even know how to hold him, let alone feed him, while dealing with my fresh C-section wound. We left the hospital after 4 days, but since Elijah was started on antibiotics, he had to stay in the hospital for a total of 7. I never imagined leaving the hospital without my baby. I was crying the whole night. And we visited for the next 3 days, but it did not feel right. He should have been at home with me. But now, as I look back as a mom of 2 boys, Elijah's now 6 and Issa's 3.5, I learned a lot from my journey to becoming a mom. I realized that things don't always go as planned, and although it's hard to accept the reality at the same time, things always seem to fall into place at the end. It's just like my mom always said those years ago, that things will work out for the best in the end. I couldn't understand that at the time, but she was right. Moms are always right. It did all work out in the end. This is my story, and I don't know anything else. I don't know if things would necessarily be better if it went according to my plan. Who knows? I was the one who wanted 4 kids, the first one before the age of 30, a baby born in May, and a baby girl, but none of that happened. That was not my perfect. But this is what I do know. I still miss my baby girl, and every May I think about how old she would be, 10 years old this month, and what kind of person she would have been. I sometimes feel a little twinge when someone unknowingly and in good faith asks if we plan to have another baby to try for a little girl, because they don't know my story, and that's okay. But I already had that little girl. My perfect is to be a mom to these 2 wonderful boys that I can't imagine my life without. Thank you. And as she mentioned, that we've been best friends since 7th grade, so that means we've gone through a lot together, a lot of boy crushes, high school drama and angst, applying to colleges. And even though we went separate ways in college, we always stayed very close, and I was so glad to be able to share my life with her, and now I'm so excited to see her in her new role as a mom. Here's her official bio. Lynn Connor always felt lost but found herself through writing. She received her MFA in creative nonfiction from Mills College and has been published in the Asian American literary journal Kartika Review, Gazillion Voices magazine, Adoption Today magazine, as well as PAX POV newsletters. Currently, Lynn has a love-hate relationship with her memoir and hopes to return to her YA fiction manuscript someday. In the meantime, Lynn is a certified Amherst Writers and Artists affiliate leading creative writing workshops through Lost Lit. She resides in Brooklyn, New York with her husband Grumpy Bert, their furry son Remy the Pug, and baby Emmy. Please welcome Lynn.
It's getting rough back there. Okay. Growing up as my mother's daughter, I used to think I wanted to be just like my mother. I'd wait until I was 40 to be a mother. I'd go to college first. I'd travel the world. I'd live my life fully before settling down, buying a house in the suburbs with a big backyard, and handing over my freedom to a kid. I would adopt just like her. I would be single, strong, independent, just like her. But when she died on May 11, 2005, from metastatic breast cancer, I was 28. My surprising reaction to grief, to the loss of losing her, was to lock everything down. I wanted to marry my boyfriend of 9 months. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to someday be a mother. I wanted a family that would never leave me. Flash forward to the year 2016, where I was everything but just like my mother. I was married, not single. I did not want to adopt. I wanted to give birth to a daughter so I could experience what my birth mother must have felt. We could not afford to buy a house, or probably ever. We lived in Brooklyn, not the suburbs of nowhere, New Jersey. So when it happened, when it was time to be a mother, along with the wifing and working and keeping my identity loud, not silent, I didn't know how. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to keep all the balls in the air without losing one. One lost ball meant failure, game over. On August 22nd, 2016, at 8:02 p.m., Emmy Vian Chow slid out as if on a slip and slide, and not being a drama queen, stuck behind my pelvic bone. The crying is incessant, like a car alarm that goes off because a biker just had to tap the hood of a Jaguar parked along Fort Greene Park, and just on and on until someone screams, "Is somebody gonna get that? Anyone?" Who set off it in the first place? But it's not her crying I wasn't prepared for. She's a baby, of course she was gonna cry. What no one told me was how much I would cry. Hold on. Pre my mom dying, I never cried. Crying was not allowed, especially as a girl, a woman. My mom used to say to me, never cry at work in front of a man. They won't understand. They will take it as weakness. They will use your tears, your emotions, your vagina against you. Never cry. Post my mom dying, I couldn't stop crying. It's like almost 3 decades of stored up tears came out. Monsoon season with no end in sight. Now with a newborn, I cried at least 3 times a day, like clockwork, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I cried because I was so tired yet hungry, and when the baby napped, I only had 20 minutes to either pee, shower, eat, or try to sleep. This dilemma broke me, and so I cried. I cried when it was time to give her a bath because no one told me how to hold her Gumby head without drowning. I cried when I got my 3rd plugged duck and my breast felt like bowling balls and I was getting hot flashes in a 110-degree oven apartment, and then an hour later got the chills so bad I thought I was in the Antarctic and I just wanted a polar bear to kill me. Just fucking kill me because of the pain and my body couldn't take it. Then I thought if I died, I'd abandon my baby, and since I was an abandoned baby, I would never do this. So I cried even harder because I just wanted to be a good mother. Now I'm 5 weeks postpartum. Okay. I'm now 5 weeks postpartum. My mother-in-law, who I invited into our home to help because everyone said after the baby comes, do you have help? Do you have family? Is your mom coming? At which point I'd say, oh, my mother-in-law will help. She's coming, not my mother. When my sister-in-law innocently praised, oh, how generous of you, letting her in, I did raise an eyebrow. And a week before their arrival, when I was more worried about my father-in-law catching a nipple or my naked heaving soaking breast oozing milk ready to plump and shut up the baby, my sister-in-law prophesied, it's not daddy you have to worry about, it's mom. On the 3rd day of my mother-in-law's 14-day stay, she asked me, do you ever clean? She was throwing out rotting fruit in the refrigerator that had grown hipster beards. I'm in a jersey tank dress that has a built-in bra. It's my nightgown and house dress all in one. I'm a deer in headlights. I've been blinking a lot in hopes to appear alert, not sleep standing. Cleaning will make you feel good. Don't you want to feel good? My mother-in-law hisses at me, making sure my husband was out of sight, and then she delivers the final blow. Didn't your mother ever teach you how to clean? I have carpal tunnel in both wrists because of this kid. Okay. If I had to describe my mother, it would be #strong woman. I've always taken this for granted. This was my mother. She was a librarian where silence wasn't a punishment, it was law. In memo sheets that were distributed in everyone's office mailboxes, silence. Always remember silence. My mother was strong in the work world, in a man's world, and at home. Since there was no father, she played the man role. She preferred hammering and caulking the bathroom rather than cleaning the toilets. My mother refused to cook and clean so much that she hired Kate, the housekeeper, who came every Wednesday afternoon. We were not rich, but my mother sacrificed driving around in a Lexus just so she didn't have to degrade herself to housewife. This is partly why she never married. My mother refused to cook and clean so much, she said, no, I will not pack a bag lunch for you. No, I will not stand at the bus stop in the morning like the other stay-at-home moms so you won't feel lonely. I was 7. So to answer my mother-in-law's question, didn't your mother ever teach you to clean? The cold coffee I'm about to swallow, it's threatening to launch like a missile at my command. I tell it to stand down, be a strong woman like your mother, because this woman equated domesticity to a woman's worth, and I was taught the opposite. By day 7, my mother-in-law's visit, I feel like a trapped prisoner. Every move I make where I struggled to grasp at my former pre-baby life, where I'd go in the morning and get a Stumptown coffee from Hungry Ghost, then I'd buy lunch, perhaps a deli sandwich from La Bagel or Academy Diner, and then I'd go to the Annex Cafe for my afternoon coffee and work on my laptop. I was working or Facebooking. I can't do any of that with her here. She won't let the baby go out. But if I leave the apartment, I'm a bad mom because I'm not taking care of the baby. So I stay in, and I feel like there's a pinhole in my lung, and soon I won't be able to breathe on my own. Lung failure, heart failure, death. On the fourth floor walk-up of our apartment, our attic in the sky, it's too small to contain all of us. There's a blanket of heaviness where no light and no air is allowed. When will my mother-in-law leave? I wonder, is this postpartum depression? Is this it? Am I in it, experiencing it? But I figure it's like love. If you have to ask yourself, am I in love with this person? Then you most likely are not. Finally, I can't take it anymore, and I force everyone out of the house. We are going to the park. The baby needs air. We need space to breathe. I read on enough mommy Facebook forums that it's completely safe to go outside with the baby even at 5 weeks old. In retaliation, my mother-in-law has cocooned the baby into the car stroller with 3 layers of blankets. It's mid-September and 80 degrees outside. Summer is refusing to let go. I hate the heat, the humidity. I hate that my newborn daughter was born in August, the worst month of the summer in New York. I want to snap. It's fucking hot outside. She doesn't need a coat or a sweater or a little beanie on her head so the heat doesn't escape and she'll die. I want to say a lot to my mother-in-law, who is not my mother. I want my mother alive. Because all of her bad judgments and criticisms I can handle. I can lob back at her. My tone can outstab her, make her bleed, hit her in the spot under the heart that makes her question every mothering decision, make her feel like a bad mother. But I can't wound my mother-in-law because she came here to help with the baby, and she's not my mother. My mother-in-law finally left. The baby and I somehow made it through what everyone calls the first 3 months of roughness. It is not rough, it is hell. It is worse than hell, but I survived somehow, just barely. And you will too, don't worry. You might be asking yourself, what did I learn? What words of wisdom can I pass on to a fellow new mommy? I learned that not only was my mother a certain kind of strong woman, she was a certain kind of mother. If you want to call her anti-mom, that's fine, but her thinking seeped into my bones. I was programmed as my mother's daughter. I learned that my mother-in-law is a kind of woman that get married, be a good servant wife, and self-sacrifice everything in the name of your children. The kind of woman my mother hated, that she railed against and hoped to high heaven I would never become. She'd say, never let a man control you. I learned that the kind of value and priority you place on being a woman has everything to do with the kind of mother you will become. My mother is dead. But she lives in me, through me. Sure, it would be nice to have her alive and to help with the baby, but she is not. And all I can do is believe in everything she has taught me is good enough. That I'm a strong woman, that I will be a good mom, and I will raise my daughter to define what a strong woman means to her. Thank you. We killed the baby. She's in the kitchen. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, next we have Anna Chapman. Anna took my Get Lit workshop several times and my rough draft workshop, and she's currently in my grief writing workshop. And I absolutely love her writing. Here's her bio. Anna Chapman is a teacher, tutor, climber, painter, and writer living in Brooklyn. You can find out some of her work at www.vivajune.com. Please welcome Anna.
This is called Mother Me in 4 parts. Part 1, the first color. Little ones ask the strangest questions. She wanted to know, when we die, what color will everything be? And what will the sky say? Little one, this one is easy. Everything will be black and black and black until it can't be black anymore. And then it will be the silver of the memory of black. And then and then that glass mirror held up to the black, saying, "This was black. Remember black?" And then the black will be gone, just like that. And you will hear, "This was the memory of black. Do you remember black?" And then the memory will be gone in an echo, and the echo of the echo. And the sky will say, "Try to remember me, if only for a moment." And then it all begins again with white, bright white, the hospital lights, or your mother's bedroom if you're lucky. And at first you will see all of the colors in that streaming white. And then your eyes will start to see the difference in the colors and the shapes of the objects. And you will start to see the white as just the background, just there to show you the other things, like your mother's face and your toys. Later, the patterns on your quilt and a game your grandmother played where she would hide a penny in one of the pockets she had laboriously sewn onto each of the 25 tiny dresses that decorated the quilt she had made for you when she heard you were coming. And you will crawl all over the pretty patterns: red and yellow dress, green pocket, no penny; pink peony dress, fuchsia pocket, no penny. This was your favorite game before you learned to walk or even speak more than a few words. But the light came in and showed you all these colors and patterns and dresses and pockets, and you knew just how to play and how to bring the dull coin to her open hand. Later, the light through the window that lights up your tiny art table so you can swirl and push the crayons down to their nubs, leaving the part too small for you to grasp on the windowsill, only to find it later melted, the bright wax pooling out of the paper and dripping down and off the ledge and splattering onto the wood floor. A tiny mess. Your mother might not even notice it. But you look at the pools and the splashes and the tiny dots of color, now dried to the baseboard, and wonder why it is so much more beautiful than anything you've drawn on the paper. And you will remember something, or something you were supposed to remember, a blackness, or was it an echo of a blackness? It gives you the shivers. You pick at the wax on the sill. It smells like birthday. You look out the window at the sky and smile. "Hello, friendly blue. I remember you." Part 2, the first memory. The first memory is of hunting for plastic Easter eggs in the backyard, running barefoot through the muddy grass and over the broken brick path, chasing the dog in circles and jumping through the sprinkler. I found a caterpillar on the blackberry bush and brought it, still clinging to the fruit, to my mother and asked if I could eat it. She assured me that it was fine, but she had thought I meant the blackberry. I hadn't. Unlike my mother, I never saw the boundaries between the completely normal and the utterly absurd. And maybe that's where it started, in the backyard of the old house, chasing the dog and screaming delightedly with each pastel egg discovered, bouncing ecstatically from stump to rock to wrought iron bench and back to stump, the yellow basket swinging from the crook in my elbow. I never even put the eggs in the basket as I found them. I just piled them up at the foot of the steps, completely disinterested in the candy treasure rattling inside, and returned to my treasure hunt. Up the rope ladder, onto the roof of the playhouse, jumping down again and crashing to my knees. My mother watching from the porch, eyebrows raised, befuddled and amused. I had eaten a caterpillar, and it hadn't even slowed me down. Part 3, the first house. It felt like snakes rustling through the dry leaves, or like earthworms straight from the red clay and wriggling in my hand, and like that cardboard box of free kittens behind the Exxon station that we were beckoned away from because my grandmother knew where this was going. And it felt like an ocean current, and me floating easy in it, back and forth, a taut chain of longing anchoring me from navel to the ocean floor. It was an uneasy feeling, and it was the unanswered question that would live under my skin for years, so simple I didn't even realize I'd asked. When will we go back to the old house? My mother missed it too, but never let on. She tried to embrace the new house. She even planted periwinkle in the side yard, but it never took. She talked about that creeping flower from the moment we moved in, how it was okay that there wasn't much sun in the yard, because certain flowers, like periwinkle, prefer the shade. She told me that she had always wanted to plant it, that she didn't resent the old rowan oaks towering over the space where her garden could have been, and blocking the sun from the room she would use as her study. She didn't mind the darkness. She would plant periwinkle, and its bright blossoms would break through the shadowy space between the house and the massive trees, where the garden should have been. She described its blossoms to me as little starlets, with a color familiar and unknowable, occupying an ethereal no man's land between blue and white and purple and gray. She planted it that spring, and then we forgot about it. It became a dark, hardy, waxy, indestructible ground covering that lasted through 2 dogs, 4 children, 6 mountain bikes, and 1 box turtle, stamping, stomping, trampling, and in the case of the turtle, mostly just hiding from us other animals under its sturdy shroud. But it never bloomed, and I never got to see its color. Part 4, the first foods. My three favorite foods growing up were incidentally the only foods my mother ever made. But before I describe them, first let me explain that my mother had 2 impassioned beliefs that influenced her cooking. First, that as a feminist working woman, she should not have to. And second, that children's natural instincts would lead them to the nutrients their bodies needed the most. So on most days, we ate full sleeves of Oreos out of the box, or maybe instant ramen if we were feeling ambitious. I even remember one determined evening making cherry jello for dinner and getting too tired to wait for it to set and drinking the warm liquid with a straw. But when she did cook, it was my favorite. The first meal was called beans and cheese. This involved emptying a can of Goya refried beans into a casserole dish and covering it generously in chunks of Kraft mozzarella cheese, heating this in the oven until melted, then serving to a family of 6 with tortilla chips, leaving only 1 dish and no utensils to clean. The second dish was similar, but this one was called toasted cheese. You fill the same casserole dish with cottage cheese and cover it in chunks of cheddar cheese, melt, and serve, but this time you eat it with spoons, not chips. But the third dish was my absolute favorite, taco salad. This was a special meal made for church functions only. To make taco salad, put 1 bag of Doritos, 1 can of black olives, a chopped head of iceberg lettuce, shredded cheddar cheese, and 2 jars of Russian dressing into a big metal bowl and mix. It tasted amazing, like candied cheese puffs. To my delight, my family was the only one who would touch the stuff, the other church goers opting for the more traditional fried chicken, potato salad, and coleslaw, which meant more for me. And also that they weren't as sophisticated as us, because my mother was a working woman with a university job. What had their mothers ever done? Thank you.
Past their bedtime. Okay. The next person up is Devin Rondo. Devin contacted me a few years ago. Almost done. Okay. Devin contacted me a few years ago to take my Works in Progress workshop, but the timing didn't work out. And then this year she signed up for my grief writing workshop. So, and then she told me she was a new mom too. So naturally, I just felt everything was aligned, and I'm really happy to know her now. Her bio is Devin Rondo lives, writes, and chases her toddler around playgrounds in Brooklyn. Her one-woman show, See Jane Give Up Dick, debuted in the New York City 2013 Fringe Festival. She fantasizes about someday maintaining her blog, finishing a full-length play, and getting 8 hours of sleep a night. You can stalk her toddler on Instagram at devindeering.com. Thanks. Here's Devin.
I've got a secret. This is a very loud mic. I don't want to tell people I am a mom, but I am. I have a child. I mother someone. I'm not sure why I'm even telling you. As I sit down to write this, my baby cries in the next room, far too early to constitute a real nap. A nap he needs maybe a little less than I do, but one I am transfixed on him getting, because without sleep there is no break or leave I can take from being his mother. While he sleeps, I can at least return to a time in my mind when who I was and what I did and where I went didn't directly affect the development of a very real and mostly lovely baby boy. Before I was my son's mom, I was Devin Preston. I grew up in Texas, where beauty pageants passed as quality entertainment. Social status was measured by how big and blonde your hair was. My own mom started setting my hair in curlers as soon as I had it. The beauty standard was sold hard and often in my house. We stayed away from ugliness of all kinds, including emotions that could ruin our faces. My transition from pretty little girl to young lady featured varied lessons in how to make myself more attractive to men, one of which was knowing how to walk right up to the line of provocative without ever needing to cross it. Men may be lowlife, good-for-nothing jerks, but you, little missy, are worthless without one. When I was 25, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. I sought a husband in this city with the urgency of a drowning rat. He, my future husband, was going to be the buoy that would finally help me stay afloat. Feminist ideals from college be damned, I needed this commitment to feel like a card-carrying adult woman, but also husbands are the only people who can make respectable women moms. And even though motherhood seemed like a bum deal, I felt I had to not only do it, but also that I had to do it perfectly, especially if I wanted to keep my adult woman card. So after many years of searching, I found a nice liberal Connecticut-born bohemian who loved his mom and was ready to grow old with someone. So I married him. I was 31 and wore very chic white pants on our wedding day. It was my not-so-subtle declaration that our marriage was going to be different. Flash forward to a year later, when I found myself pregnant as planned and in a full-blown panic. I don't know why. I wasn't too young, nor was I too old. I was healthy. I had graduated from college. I was married, and we didn't live with our parents, yet there it was. I was ashamed. My body is something that has never rightfully belonged to me. What it looks like, how much space it takes up, even how it moves, and what I choose to do with it, all feels strictly regulated by standards set by people who aren't me and who are usually not women. I know this to be true on a deep and painfully unconscious level. From the time I began to show signs of beauty or appeal, that power was labeled by someone else as naughty. It became my first responsibility as a little girl to keep this power to myself and not to let it see the light of day. Any experimentation I did that toyed with my lack to draw and hold male attention was done with the clear understanding that it was very dangerous and wrong. I was told that men can see me as that. In fact, that is all they are interested in seeing me as, but I am not allowed to enjoy the ways in which that might empower me. Shame is the color sluts wear. The pregnancy happens to be the fullest expression of the female power, and I found myself wanting to wish it away. It was too much responsibility that I hadn't the first clue how to hide or keep politely to myself. Everyone was going to know I had done the unthinkable. So I reached back through time, grasping for some lesson in my past to help me through. I came up with fists full of paternal programming that had been stuffed haphazardly into the darker corners of my mind. These were intended to keep me safe from unwanted pregnancies caused by men I hardly knew and did not apply to my current condition. But they began to assault me all the same. Remind me that my body was not my own, that its life-giving abilities were none of my business, that my only responsibility to this body was to keep it in pristine showroom condition for its male owner, lest he find a better, more fit model to replace it with. Instead of helping, they began to pull me down faster than an undertow. My father, in his infinite drunken wisdom, thought it his duty to school me on how to be the best daughter, wife, mother. I am nothing if not a good student, but sadly, the fears that were gestating during my pregnancy weren't going to be solved by doing my hair, putting on something cute, heels maybe, then sweetly telling my husband he's strong and a good provider and we're so lucky to have him. Nothing could distract me from the ferocious life force brimming beneath my belly button that I was ultimately going to be responsible for. I couldn't access a single societal message that was telling me I was perfectly suited for motherhood and I could just relax and enjoy the adventure. Yes, I am as shocked as you that I am not writing this from the 1920s. These old, worn-out notions were threatening to ruin the relationship I longed to have with my growing child and with his father. The patriarchy strikes again. But this was bigger than swimsuit season and gluten ladies and a lifetime of Passover desserts. Now it was actually personal. When I arrived on the other side of being a pregnant woman, surprise, surprise, The experience of being a new woman, or a new mom, was loaded with ridiculous expectations for me to adhere to as well. Apparently, in addition to keeping both of us alive, I was supposed to take monthly pictures of my child, laying next to a cutesy sign I made, or paid a lot of money to have someone on Etsy make for me, documenting his growth, while also getting along with my mother-in-law. So, after having successfully delivered a person into being, I arrived home from the hospital in another Category 5 panic. This panic was the heaving, sobbing variety. I was convinced I had already failed our son because he came home with us in mismatched 3-month-old clothing and didn't have a beautiful, completed nursery in which to rest his tiny, oddly shaped head. But thankfully, a deeper truth started to assert itself between the tears. She had been with me quietly through the whole pregnancy. She was by my side through the too many hours of labor as well. She is here for me now. She said to me, "You just delivered a fucking baby, bitch. You got this." And she was right. The truth is, I did know how to mother. Whether the title of mom, mother, or mama still give me the willies, I am that now. I carry toys in my purse. Every article of clothing I own is stained with something. There is no real way of knowing what. And I also am the person my son knew before he was born, and the person who continues to be there for him as he gets more comfortable being outside of the body where he was created. And at the end of the day, I'm just his mom. But also, he literally wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. So ladies, it bears repeating. We got this. I do know how to mother, and so do you. It has nothing to do with him or me looking or acting a certain way. It's just me showing up and being present with him as he makes his way out into the world. Creating life and delivering that life safely into adulthood isn't a foreign skill for us women that we need to pick up on Pinterest. It's not knitting. There is no one right way to do this shit, so thank God. The real secret, the right way, is the way you are already doing it. But you better keep that shit to yourself. That's what I intend to do, at least until after the revolution.
Next, I'd like to introduce J.P. Howard. I met J.P. when I worked at Poets and Writers in the Grants Department, and I was lucky enough to attend a Women's Writers in Bloom poetry workshop, and I was in awe of the writing community that she had created. I have a lot of respect for J.P. I personally invited her to read because of how open and honest she has been with her grief. Her bio, J.P. Howard is the author of Say Mirror, a 2016 Lambada literary finalist, and a Bury Your Love Poems Here, a Belladonna chaplet. JP was a 2017 Split This Rock Freedom Plow Award for Poetry and Activism finalist, and is featured in the 2017 Lesbian Poet Trading Card Series from Headmistress Press. She was in a 2016 Lambada Literary Emerging Writer Award winner and has received fellowships from Cave Canem, Lambada, and Vona. JP curates Women Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon, a supportive forum for women writers. Please welcome JP.
I want to dedicate the reading of this essay, which is called Goodbye Mama, to the memory of my mom, who passed away about 1.5 years ago, and to a friend named Esther Louise, who passed away yesterday. Silence had been our ritual when Mama was drinking. It was only the two of us in our Sugar Hill apartment, and I had grown used to the quiet and her closed bedroom door. If her door was ajar, I would stand silently and watch her from behind while she sat on the edge of her queen-size bed, smoking cigarettes, sipping vodka, and staring at the picture on her nightstand, that married man she had always loved. He had died earlier that year, and Mama was sadder than usual. Sometimes she would just stare out her window, which looked ridiculous since her window faced a brick wall. Other nights, I heard her sobbing real loud behind her door. Then the room would go silent. Other nights, I would hear Billie Holiday, would usually be moaning real low in the background on Mama's cassette player. Her room would be lit with a dim light, or sometimes no light at all. so Mama was just a silhouette, her ponytail pulled tight around her scalp. Even in the dark room, she was gorgeous. On those nights when Mama passed out, I would clean up after her and tuck her in. I crushed her lit cigarettes and threw the ashes in our toilet. I emptied open bottles of Smirnoff or cans of beer and hid the unopened cans deep in the back of our closets so Mama couldn't find them. Somehow she would always find them. I'd pull Mama onto the bed using all my little girl strength to first lift one dangling leg onto the bed, then the other. Then I'd cover her up with her favorite purple knitted blanket so she wouldn't get cold. Next, I'd kiss Mama's cheek goodnight and whisper, just like she did for me when she tucked me in, "Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite." I'd usually sit for a while and watch how peaceful she looked. I couldn't wait until my real Mama returned to me in the morning. When the rest of our apartment was wrapped in silence, I would retreat to my bedroom and play with my dollhouse and my huge collection of dolls. Mama always went out of her way to get me identical dolls, one white and one matching black doll. All my friends thought I was real spoiled because my dolls filled the top of my dresser and spread out across my bed. Since my dad was half Italian and half black, Mama said she felt I should have dolls that reflected all the parts of me. Even though she and Papa had broken up when I was 4 years old, Mama seemed to think having black and white dolls was real important. Anyhow, those dolls were my friends and kept me company in that quiet little apartment while Mama disappeared behind her bedroom door. Half awake and still groggy from sleep, I run from our bedroom into the living room to answer my phone. It's 5:35 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. My partner, Norma Jean, and I are quick to pick up our phone at odd hours, as both our moms are now elderly and sick. 9th floor hospice shows up on my caller ID, and Mr. Khan, a hospice supervisor, is on the other end. Miss Juliet, oh, Miss Juliet, I am so very sorry to have to tell you that your mother just passed away. She died peacefully in her sleep. We were checking on her every half hour through the night, and when we just checked on her less than 10 minutes ago, we realized she took her last breath. She went peacefully, Miss Juliet. Please take comfort in that, he offered. I slide off my sofa onto the cold wood floor and begin to sob those heavy cries you can't control. Norma Jean holds me as I rock my body back and forth, still holding the phone. I pull myself together for a moment and tell Mr. Khan we will get to hospice right after we drop our son off at his middle school. Mr. Khan assures me he will leave Mama in her room so the family can say our goodbyes. Feeling like a lost and lonely child, I hang up the phone, fold myself into a tight ball in the corner of our living room, my arms wrapped around my knees. I rock back and forth on the floor, pushing my body against the cool wall. I spent that evening before visiting Mama in her hospice room. This has been our ritual for a year. Her only child, I would visit her as much as I could, though it never felt like enough time. Last night, Mama was weaker than usual. She usually sipped whatever liquid treats I brought her with great enthusiasm, using a bendy straw. Often, like a child, she would scream, "More, more, I want more," and I would comply, eager to make her happy. It had been almost a year since she had been put on a liquid diet, and I was glad she could find some pleasure in her limited food choices. I noticed that night before she died that Mama didn't seem to have enough strength to sip liquid through her straw up into her mouth, so I became her personal cheering squad. "Come on, Mama, just sip. Use your tongue and suck it all up, Mama. You can do it. It's your favorite. It's strawberry yogurt smoothie," I urged, my voice upbeat and enthusiastic, hoping she would react to my positive energy. She tried to sip the liquid, her cheeks sucked in like a little child with the tube-thick milkshake, and a straw. Maybe I just wanted to imagine she was trying. Norma Jean and I go to the front desk, and the floored supervisor, who we have never met, greets us. I'm in a fog that morning, and the names of new staff I meet throughout the day disappear from my memory. The supervisor expresses her condolences, walks with us to Mama's room, and opens her door. Mama's body is covered from head to toe in a white plastic zippered body bag. My sadness immediately turns to anger and shock. I tell the supervisor that Mr. Khan had promised earlier that morning that Mama's body would remain uncovered until the family got to say our goodbyes. There is no reason for Mama to be wrapped up like that. I want to scream at the thought of Mama suffocating in a white plastic zippered bag. She apologizes and then suddenly, without warning, unzips the plastic and pulls it halfway down from the tip of Mama's head to her belly. There is no time to prepare for the jarring sight. All I can do is close my eyes and bawl at the sight of Mama's frail skeletal frame on the gurney while Norma Jean holds me close. At last, the supervisor leaves us alone in Mama's hospice room with the antiseptic smell. The white plastic sheet, now folded down, exposes half of Mama's body, rail thin, cheeks sunken in, and hair pulled tight against her scalp in a ponytail. Mama's gray hair glistens against sunlight. Her breasts, once full and voluptuous, dangle down the side of her body. I am looking at a stranger's body, someone who was more skeleton than skin, a year of liquid diet exposed on that gurney. Mama's mouth is slightly open, stuck in a semi-sweet smile, as if she had drifted off to sleep daydreaming about Adam, that long-gone, not-so-secret lover. My love, Norma Jean, steps a few feet away, promises me she will be just on the other side of the closed door. Once the door to the room is closed, Mama and I are finally alone together. It is only now that I let myself go back to that childhood memory. It was winter, a crisp blue day. The sun flickered against Mama's empty topaz-colored pill bottles, and the air was heavy with secrets. Mama stretched out, stone still on our powder blue sofa, her signature ponytail, her jet black hair against her flawless skin, her lips a full pout of ruby red. She had on her favorite fitted dashiki, brown, gold, red, and green African patterns, a kaleidoscope of colors with fitted polyester bell-bottom pants. Even dead, Mama was stunning. She was almost as pretty as she had been in all the pictures, self-portraits, framed magazine covers that lined our walls. Mama was still a diva in death. Her body looked as if it were stuck to the plastic that covered our pale blue sofa. I wondered how I would be able to peel her off the sofa. I breathed hard, like there was no air left in our tiny Sugar Hill apartment. I was 7 years old. I just knew Mama was dead as soon as I got home from school and saw her lifeless body. No matter how much I tugged and pulled at Mama's limp body, this time she refused to respond. I tried my usual routine, ice-cold water from our bathroom, filled in a Dixie cup, splashed against Mama's face. That usually woke her up. This time, Mama didn't budge, no matter how hard I tried. I held my cheek close to her lips, waiting to feel her warm breath, like so many times before, after a night of drinking Smirnoff and smoking Salem menthols. I didn't feel the warm breath that usually signal life. I screamed as loud as my little girl voice could yell, Mommy, please, wake up. But still, only silence, no snoring, just nothingness. I ran and knocked on a neighbor's door, but there was no answer from Miss Bessie May's apartment. I remembered I had learned in school to dial 911 if there was an emergency. So I ran back inside, went to my bedroom, and dialed the pink push-button phone by my bed. My slender little fingers trembling, managed to dial the number and give the phone operator on the other end our Sugar Hill address. Strangers in navy blue uniforms showed up at our door soon after. Later, I would learn they were called EMTs. They were gentle with me. "Where is your mother, little girl? What is your name?" they asked as they ran through our tiny apartment to the front where Mama was spread out dead on the living room sofa. "Juliet," I whispered into the air. "Is Mama dead?" No one heard me. They were all trying to bring Mama back to life. I heard their words floating around our living room. "Find her pulse. Cute kid. What a pity. Looks like she OD'd." All their words were swirling around me, and I sat on the floor in a corner, crisscross applesauce, watching them try to find Mama's pulse. Inside, I knew how sad Mama had been. I knew Mama lost herself in Smirnoff, especially on weekends, because she was so sad. I knew Mama missed modeling on runways and being on all those glossy magazine covers, because that's all she ever talked about some days. I knew being a mama wasn't glamorous. I knew it was all my fault. I also knew that all I had in the world was attached to Mama. I knew instinctively why Mama's pill bottles sitting on the dresser were empty that day. But nobody asked me what I knew, because when you are a child, you don't know anything but how to suck a secret in and watch and wait and whisper under your breath, "Please come back." And you know, even when you are 7 and don't understand the word pulse, that it's a very good thing when they find it. "We found the pulse," someone shouted. One of the men in the uniform bent down to make eye contact with me and whispered gently in my ear, "Baby girl, we found your mama's pulse. Little Juliet, she's gonna be all right, child." I rocked myself back and forth in that tiny little bit of corner, so happy that they had found that thing they called a pulse. Soon after, I went down the block to stay with Grandma Pearl for the next month. Nobody talked about what happened to Mama during that time. Everybody just said Mama was a little sick, and the doctors were making sure she got better. When Mama got better, she and I returned back home to our Sugar Hill apartment and buried our secret. We never talked about Mama trying to hurt herself. Nobody was supposed to know that Mama almost lost her pulse. Years later, when I was a teenager, I asked Grandma Pearl about my memory, about those empty pill bottles and Mama wanting to die. A part of me sometimes wondered if I had made that memory up, since nobody in our family ever talked about it. Nobody. When I finally tried to talk about it with Grandma Pearl, she said, "Your mama lived and she's alive. That's all you need to know, child." Grandma's words dismissed my memory. I could see the anger in her face and the hurt, and a part of me was scared that if I asked Mama about it, she would start drinking again. I was so happy that she had stopped drinking since I had started high school, so I left that memory buried there in the past until Mama died. Our Sugar Hill living room all those years ago was filled with sunlight, a beam of light so bright that you could see particles of dust floating in front of your eyes. I could get lost in the specks floating around the room if I truly let myself go. Mama used to say I was too serious, too grown. I spent so much time alone in my room, and Mama used to urge me to invite my friends over to play. Tasha and Nene, my friends from down the block, usually wanted to come home over and play with all my dolls after we got out from school. Sometimes, if I knew Mama was upstairs, drunk, I would lie when we went to the courtyard in my building and say, "Mama don't feel well today," or "She got a bad cold," or "She got a headache," or "I got chores to do." Some days, if I was really lonely, I would let them come upstairs to our apartment and play. Inevitably, Mama would come out of her room and say in her boisterous voice, words all slur, "How y'all feeling today, girls?" A part of me would cringe inside, worry that Tasha and Nene would start laughing at how silly Mama sounded with her slurred words. But they would just say, "Hi, Miss Ruth," and then get back to cornrowing my doll's hair. but I never did tell them about what Mama was doing behind her closed bedroom door, and they never asked. Mama didn't really cook much, so I did a lot of running around for us both. I'd go to our local Chinese restaurant over on 148 and St. Nicholas and order Mama's favorite chicken chow mein and my favorite shrimp with lobster sauce. The sauce was a grayish white gelatin, and I'd pick out every little green pea. Sometimes after Mama ate a good meal, she would get herself together, sober up, and come out of her room to watch TV with me. I'd make our favorite snack for TV nights, bologna, American government cheese, and sourdough pickles, all cut in cute, even square pieces that I arranged on a big blue and white glass plate with saltines. Those are my favorite nights with Mama, watching All in the Family, and we were almost like a normal family on TV night. When Mama was alive, she would say, "Baby girl, you got to let go and let God." So tonight, I say, goodbye, Mama. Goodbye, powder blue sofa wrapped in plastic. Let me rip the plastic off now. We can exhale. Goodbye, empty amber colored pill bottles. It's time to let the sun reflect through you, you little prism of gold bottles. Goodbye, sad girl sitting in a corner while EMTs talk about you like you're not even there. You cute pigtail baby girl, let it all go now. Breathe out, baby girl. It's okay to cry if you're scared. It's okay if you are tired of being strong for other folks. It's okay if your sweet little mask covering your face, baby girl. Rip it off, lay it down, stomp it, or throw it against a pale green wall. It's okay to show those ugly secrets. Let them breathe. You got to heal now. Break the liquor bottles you tried to hide from Mama all those years. Let them shatter into a million pieces. Let them go, child. Let it all go. Say goodbye, Mama. Say I love you. I still love you, Mama. Thank you.
Is Kathy Moore. Kathy is what I call a Lost Lit veteran. She started taking my workshops back in 2014, and we've been together ever since. I've always loved hearing her writing, and she's very generous with her feedback. So here is her official bio. Kathy Moore is a teacher of English as a second language at a public elementary school in Brooklyn. She also teaches in the continuing education department at Hunter College. She holds an MA in TESOL from Hunter College and has a BA in French literature from Cornell University. She is indebted to Lost Lit for providing inspiration, support, and snacks on many Wednesday nights. She dedicates tonight's reading to her daughter, Miranda. Let's hear it for Kathy.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. This is called My Mother's Bud Vase, and it is about events that happened a little over 20 years ago. I can't remember now who gave us those cups and plates, my father says. We're standing in the dining room of my parents' house in Brooklyn. Your mother loved those, he adds, looking across the room at me. My older brother Rick and I are standing by 2 rows of open shelves filled with my mother's favorite things. The white plates from Japan, the deep black enamel bowl with the white interior, where one of the kittens we had liked to sleep, and the crystal bud vase. Rick leans toward me and whispers, Nancy and I gave her those cups and dessert plates, but don't say anything because Linda won't like it. Nancy was Rick's first wife, and Linda is his second. He looks around to make sure Linda isn't listening, but she's too busy surveying everything that has to be packed and shipped to Berkeley or donated to Goodwill. She is strategizing with my father about what he should keep for the apartment he's moving to in Strawberry Creek Lodge, a senior residence near her and Rick in Berkeley. After my mother died, he said he couldn't bear to stay in Brooklyn by himself. I'd like to have the crystal bud vase, I say, pointing to it on the second shelf. In the summers, my mother would clip a red rose that was newly opened from the rose bush in the backyard and display it in the bud vase on the dining room table. Her roses were beautiful, but they had sharp, pointed thorns on the stems. I remember standing next to her in the backyard and trying to hold one and pricking my fingers. I looked at the thorns and felt like there was something wrong. I wished my mother knew how to grow roses without thorns. As I take the vase down from the second shelf, I hear my mother reminding me that it's heavy and to lift it carefully. I hand the vase to Linda, who starts wrapping it in newspaper. "You'll want it well protected for the subway ride home," she says. Linda is the dean of a community college, and I'm glad she's here because she's good at planning and organizing, which I'm not. Linda even looks organized, with her short dark hair parted neatly on the side and black framed glasses. She's wearing a khaki skirt and a lilac short-sleeved polo shirt. She looks collected, even though it's sweltering in our house because it's August and my father hates air conditioning. I look down at my gray linen trousers and my simple but expensive cream-colored t-shirt to reassure myself that I look collected too, and stylish. In the past month, I'd bought a closet full of new clothes because looking put together helped me believe that maybe I could maintain control, when inside I felt bereft. Linda walks over and puts her arm around me. She says, "Kathy, you know, your mother and I had a special relationship. She was so beautiful, and not enough notice was taken of her." I lean my head on Linda's shoulder. Linda loved my mother, maybe more than anyone else in our family except me. Rick loved my mother, sort of, but then she wasn't his mother. His mother was my father's first wife. My mother was his third wife, which is why I'm 33 and Rick's 53. Later, when Linda has assigned Rick and me to wrap plates and bowls in newspaper in the kitchen, he says to me, "Don't worry about Dad. There are plenty of single women at Strawberry Creek Lodge who will bring him food and want to spend time with him." I think to myself, Jesus, my mother just died 3 months ago, and you're talking about Dad meeting women? You're a psychologist. Why aren't you more empathetic? But I don't say any of that. I just look at him and raise my eyebrows slightly. He doesn't get it, and I realize that's what he would worry about if Linda died. Rick's one of those guys who always had a girlfriend. It's not that he's incredibly handsome. He is tall and slender with dark hair, but he has a unibrow. And when he smiles, you can see that his front teeth grew in different directions and now overlap awkwardly. Rick likes to say that his teeth are good individually, but that the group dynamics are difficult. I remember so many of his girlfriends, Mary, Rita, Joan, Sarah, but he never stayed with anyone for very long until Linda. 2 nights later, it's 10:30 p.m. and the phone rings in my East Village apartment. It's my father, I mouth silently across the room to my husband, Paul, who reaches for the remote to turn the TV down. "I'm sorry to call so late, but I feel so badly about having to get rid of your mother's things. I just can't take everything to California. Are you sure you don't want to put them in storage?" "No, we already talked about this, and anyway, she would be the first person to say, 'It's just stuff, let it go.'" "That's right, she would say that, wouldn't she?" he says, and he suddenly sounds uplifted. As much as she loved the black and white enamel bowl and the dessert plates from Rick and Nancy, I can hear her saying, "It's okay if you can't keep them, they're just things." My mother contains so many contradictions. She was an English teacher, and I guess that's why I'm a teacher too. Although my favorite book is Pride and Prejudice, whereas her favorite books were The Great Gatsby and Moby Dick. But for all my mother's smarts, she married my father, who, when he was drunk, hit her. He wasn't drunk often, maybe once or twice a year. But when I was 12, I asked her about the black and blue marks on her arm, and she said he didn't mean it. She was 15 years younger than he was, and she protected him and took care of him until she couldn't because of the cancer. After we hang up, Paul says, "I don't understand how you can be so kind to him." "It's what my mother would have wanted," I answer. It's October now, 2 months later and 5 months since my mother died. I can see orange and yellow leaves on the tree outside the front window of the apartment where Paul and I live on East 10th Street. Rick is in New York attending a conference at Columbia, and I've invited him for brunch. Raspberry pancakes and real bacon, which we both love, but try not to eat too often. We're sitting at the table finishing our coffee, while Paul is in the kitchen washing the dishes. I need to tell you about Becky, Rick says, as he wraps his hand tightly around his mug. Becky is the daughter of Rick's first wife, Nancy, and Rick's stepdaughter, his only child, really. After a pause, Rick says, Becky had started seeing this guy Tex a year ago. He sells drugs and he was arrested for stealing a car, but he got off with probation. I'm slightly confused. It's hard for me to imagine a guy in Berkeley called Tex. Rick then says, I wanted Becky to stay away from Tex, but she's 18 and thinks she knows everything. Nancy thought it would be better to let things be, that Becky would move on eventually. And anyway, Linda doesn't like me to be too involved with my ex-wife, so I tried to stay out of it. I think about Nancy, who had this ethereal, I think about Nancy, who had this ethereal look with soft brown hair that curled around her face. Her wide blue eyes always seemed to be looking directly at you, but I was never sure how much she really saw. The first time I met Nancy, we were in the kitchen, and she was pureeing mushroom soup in the Cuisinart and telling me about her step aerobics class, when Becky, who was 10, barged in and thrust a notebook down on the kitchen table. Mom, I need help with math, she had said. Not now, honey. Can't you see I'm talking to Kathy? Nancy pushed the notebook back at her. I take a sip of my coffee as Rick says, Becky got a baby. He says it so softly, I can barely hear him. I'm stunned. I can't believe my New York Review of Books reading, PhD from Columbia psychologist brother, has just said, Becky got a baby. Then I realize he's crying. I look at the red rose in my mother's bud vase, which is sitting on a side table in a corner of the room. Earlier that day, I had bought a bunch of red roses at the corner bodega. I only wanted one for the vase, so I gave the others to an elderly woman down the hall. Please, God, I think, when I become a mother, let me be a good one.
Okay, next we have Taryn Rothstein. Taryn was referred to the call for submissions by her friend Catherine, who read earlier, and I love friend referrals, so I'm really glad she submitted, and you're going to love her story. Her bio, Taryn Rothstein is a writer by passion and a nanny by paycheck. You can find her buying 12 Shades of Red Lipstick, reading Rebecca Snolt, and hanging out on her sister's couch. She lives in East Harlem. Here's Taryn.
I'm not allowed to have a TV in my room. Sometimes I creep into Shelby's room, hands and knees, the scratch of mint green carpet on my fingers, and sit crisscrossed on the floor next to her bed. She looks down at me and I smile. If she's in a good mood, she laughs and lets me stay. We sit and watch Roseanne for hours. In the morning, during the school year, if I make it downstairs fast enough, and before Shelby, and before my twin brothers, but they're only in preschool, so they don't have to wake up as early as we do, I get to pick the channel. Our kitchen TV is mounted above the table at the bottom of a big chestnut staircase, which echoes your footsteps as you barrel down it. I grab the white remote about the size of my tiny hand and try to choose between Little Bill and Power Rangers. Shelby really hates Little Bill, and I'm not mad at her right now, so I put on Power Rangers. I decide I'm the Yellow Ranger, and I kick so much butt, and all the boy Rangers have secret crushes on me. I don't even look at my mother, but I know she's there, the sun behind a cloud. No verification needed. She makes me 3 silver dollar-sized microwave pancakes, dense and sticky, covered in Aunt Jemima's syrup. In 2nd grade, you don't know Aunt Jemima's picture is racist. Mom sets it down in front of me with the same cup of chocolate milk I drink every morning. I only see her out of the corner of my eye, focusing on many flashing lights from the Rangers fighting on the screen above me. I become so addicted to powdered chocolate Nesquik that Mom brings it on road trips so I can have it every morning no matter where we go. Mom goes into her room, throws her sweatpants and oversized t-shirt into the laundry bin, and gets ready for the gym. She digs out a pair of black ankle stretch pants and navy blue sports bra, a large t-shirt of some 80s band with the sleeves cut off, and thick white socks. She does this in the dark so my father can keep sleeping. She wears a bandana tied around her head to hold back her shoulder-length ruby hair. Her body curves like soft ripples in a lake. She's always pulling out her shirt to cover the size of her stomach, hips, and bottom, but to me, this is what a woman looks like. Shelby sits on the chair next to mine, eating peanut butter toast and water. The Pink Ranger takes off her helmet. I realize she's prettier than the Yellow Ranger. I'm the Pink Ranger, Shelby says. No, I want to be the Pink Ranger. I quickly abandon the Yellow Ranger. I'm the Pink Ranger, you are the Yellow Ranger. She is firm, and my silence concedes for me. The hospital smells like dirty skin and chemicals. I'm hoping all the nurses and doctors would look like Grey's Anatomy characters. I truly actually think that will happen. I got addicted to watching it with Shelby the summer before my freshman year of college, and having never spent time in a hospital before Mom got sick, this was my only basis of life in the medical world. I envisioned steamy doctors pulling med students into on-call rooms while the rest of the students gossiped about it. There's one episode where the main character, Meredith Grey, has her estranged father as a patient and finds out he needs a liver transplant, except he used to be an alcoholic, and there are rules that prohibit you from receiving a new organ if you haven't been sober for at least a year. Mom's been sober for about 25 years? Yeah, that sounds right. It was before Shelby was born, so she should be okay. I look up. The bright lights are giving me a headache, and the nurse is repeating something to me, but I can't hear him. He puts his hand on my mother's bed, trying to wheel her away. My younger brothers are standing there with backpacks on. 2 black backpacks completely full. What could they possibly have packed? It looks like they're going to sleepaway camp. The longer I stare at them, the bigger they seem to get. Honey, we have to take her into surgery now. The anesthesia is affecting her. Muffled, fuzzy. I look down at my blue Converses. The scuffs on them match the scuffs on the hospital floor. I inhale deeply. Ma'am, the muffled voice is getting clearer and louder. Ma'am, we are taking her away now. I realize he's talking to me. What? No, you aren't. I see gripping the end of the bed. The cold rails giving me conviction. Just hold on 1 second. Just wait. I pull my phone out from my pocket, scroll through my recent calls, and hit Shelby. Ringing. Hi, we're almost there. We just parked. She's echoing from the parking garage, and I can hear Dad in the background say, tell them to wait. Shell, they're trying to take her into surgery. You have to be here right now. We're like 9 floors down. Tell them to wait. We're running. I'm hanging up, but make them wait. She's panting. She had to come home from college, a 3.5-hour drive. And then Dad went and picked her up from the house. But my school is in Chapel Hill, only 10 minutes from Duke Hospital, so I was the first one here when Mom got the call, before my parents, and I paced around the gift store for a half hour but forgot to buy anything. My eyes focus on the male nurse and his gold watch, his hand still on her hospital bed. Sir, my father and my sister will be here in 1 minute. They are in the hospital. You have got to wait. You have to wait for them, please. He wants to say no. Okay, I'll go speak to the surgeon and I'll be right back. We have to take her in the next 5 minutes, though, sweetie. Sweetie. My hand is still on the phone, staring at my purse on the floor next to the bed. Shelby gave me this one after she wore it down. It's ugly maroon, fraying around the seams. I stare at it and think I should probably buy a new one, but I hate spending money on bags. The fraying maroon seams fill my eyes. I blink and reach forward to pick it up. I hear my brothers crying, standing near my mother's face, but none of us are speaking. She's loopy. She tries to keep her eyes open. Her toes are numb, her knees are numb, or maybe she never feels her knees. Her thighs, hips, and belly are water. She's made of water. She's melting into the bed. She tries again to open her eyes. They fix on me for a moment, her irises of green. Her green is my green, and they close. If I say goodbye now, it'll be like saying goodbye to a toddler who's being carried off to bed. Doesn't count. Her red hair is falling over her drooping eyes, and she looks sad, but I'm frozen. No words come out of my mouth. I look around for an adult to comfort my brothers and realize I am the adult. Minutes are hours, or it's all frozen. I feel like I can't breathe. I pull out my phone. 2 minutes have passed, so I call Shelby again. She doesn't answer. Beads of clear sweat form on my upper lip. Ethan, the more sensitive of my brothers, or at least outwardly so, has pools of tears on his face, and Jake is standing next to him, both of their hands on my mother's shoulders. She looks cold. Even in the summer, she wears slippers around the house. I tried to argue with her one particularly sweltering summer. Maybe it's low blood circulation, Ma. You have to start wearing those really tight socks that old men wear to keep it flowing. No, I've always been like this. I just have cold blood, she said. I call my sister again. No answer, but her and Dad burst through the wide oak double doors at the same moment and jog over to our curtained-off room. I've never seen my father run before, not once that I could remember, although I'm sure he used to run with us as kids. But he has bad knees and he's out of shape. To see him run felt like he was someone else's father, and this was someone else's scenario. It seems like it shouldn't be you, but not only that it shouldn't be you, it isn't you. Even as it's happening, you still think it can't possibly be happening. So the tears that come out of your eyes are an effect of the far recesses of your brain that somehow believe this is true and real. Why aren't there any McDreamy doctors to come hold our hands and reassure us of their expertise, of our mother's safety, of her life? I'm suddenly angry that these doctors and nurses aren't more attractive. We're here. We ran up like 7 flights of stairs. You did great, Shelby, Dad says, patting my sister on the shoulder. She's a bit damp on her forehead, but far less out of breath, her hands on her hips. She's taller than me, thin, but with the same lake-like curves as my mother. Her nose is pointed down as she stares at the floor. Dad is doubled over, catching his breath, and the male nurse comes back in. We have to take her now. Oh, okay. Dad walks toward her bed and kisses her forehead. We love you, honey. We love you. You're gonna do great. A cacophony of small, childlike voices began to sing, Bye, Mom. We'll see you soon. We love you. I release the metal rail as they pull her away through the obtrusive oak double doors. I want to tell her she's the light in the kitchen windows on spring mornings, and she's the reason I love books, and she's more beautiful than Juliana Margulies. A cloud of ruby hair disappears through the doors. The 5 of us are standing there staring. I don't feel anyone near me, no hands holding mine. I am one solid human standing very straight, holding up my own weight, which seems a difficult feat, as if gravity decided to up its game today. A few weeks after the successful liver transplant, she starts running a fever, and no doctor can understand why. Through all the tests and hands and tubes, no one can tell us anything. So she's staying for observation. This is my sophomore spring break. Shelby already has a plane ticket to Florida. My parents tell her to go. I pretend like I think she should go too. My dad tells me he's already taken too much time off work. My brothers are only 17. For 2 weeks, it was just me and Mom, day after day in the same room, Mom and I with nothing more than a hospital bed, a sofa chair, and a mounted TV, and in the corner sat the world's smallest shower toilet sink combo. The first night, after falling asleep to Friday Night Lights on my laptop, I hear a moan. I look to the bed and see the sheets moving, her feet trying to kick them off. Her moaning grows like an ache rising deep within her that surprised her, the way a baby can't tell you what's wrong and can only cry. Her moaning is turning into tears as I leap up from the plastic-covered chair. Mom, are you okay? Let me press the nurse button. Are you okay? I didn't want to press it until I got an answer. It's instinct. Wait for parental approval. No answer, just more moaning and writhing, wriggling around the bed, a childlike tantrum. Pain everywhere is what I imagine. There must be so much pain she can't speak. I move into the hallway and run toward the nurse's desk. Something is wrong with my mother. She's in pain. Unmoving, a woman with sandy-colored hair and ugly purple scrubs and red-framed glasses purses her lips. I'm sure she just needs more pain meds. I'll send someone in. She makes a phone call. A fucking phone call. She stays in her chair and uses the phone to get someone to come in. How is it that every person in the world isn't as concerned for this woman as me? Get up, bitch, help my mom, is what I want to yell in her face. But only a few seconds later, a different nurse jogs into my mother's room. I glance again at the red frames and run back toward the moaning. In 5 minutes, she's asleep again, the only noise coming from a beeping machine. I sit in the sofa chair and try to close my eyes. I think I hear the moaning and jolt awake. She's still asleep, her face scrunched up, creating bulldog-like wrinkles. She's asleep, but not comfortable. I pull out my laptop and choose Friends this time, since I've seen every episode. I know how they all end. I know what happens to the characters, I know their beginnings and their plot lines, and I sometimes even know what they're about to say, all within the confines of 30 minutes. I gaze up and my mother's red hair folds into the pillowcase. Her body, her hair, her breathing, all making mountains and hills in the bed. If I look at her for too long, I'll want to lay with her and there isn't enough room. A bed only meant for one landscape. I put in earbuds and try and focus on Monica yelling at Chandler. But it's funny to me because I know that they'll get engaged in this episode. I know what they will say to each other. I'll watch them cry and I will only smile. Sometimes I still go into her room and hug her while she's asleep. 5 years after her surgery and I still check on her, but only sometimes, just for a moment, just without waking her. I smell her ruby hair and put her cheek on mine. She breathes in deep and rolls over. Thank you.
We're almost there. This is our last reader. Last but not least, Erin Forensic. I met Erin in 2013 when we had our first call for submissions. And ever since, every time I hold an open call, she submits. And every time her stories are so good and funny, I let her in. So her bio, Erin studied English literature and creative writing at Fordham University. Her work has been rejected by the Missouri Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, and the New York Times. She wants to give a shout out to her kick-ass mom who, God love her, would probably pretend to be cool with the details of this story if she ever managed to get her hands on the uncensored version, which she will not. Let's give it up for Erin.
This is called a love letter. My mom's gallstones sit in a baby food jar somewhere in my parents' house, so she's a little lighter than the rest of us. She has 4 noticeable scars on her body, one from the gallbladder surgery, one from the smallpox vaccine, and 2 from childhood accidents. She was running down the hill with a metal pail to milk the cows, and when she fell, the rim of the pail gashed her face, leaving a raised scar where her bottom lip meets her chin. Another one from where she was hiding in the field, and her father almost ran her over with the combine. He stopped short when he saw her, having taken just a few deep swipes of the skin off her arm. My mom grew up poor in a white salt box with 10 sisters, a mother who worried all the time, a father who drank and hit. Animals belonged in the barn, not in the house. Beds should be made, clothing creased. It wasn't a sin to get lice, but it was a sin to keep it. She and her sisters piled on top of their mother to protect her from their father's hands. In the winter, they dried their clean clothes in the oven and went to school with burnt underwear. Her parents named her Gail, G-A-I-L, but she changed the spelling to G-A-Y-L-E, hearing that that was the girl's way. Her teacher questioned the small scrawl at the top of the homework assignment, but in the end, she just shrugged, and my mom had a new name. In 5th grade, a classmate held a pencil on my mom's chair while she sat down, and a small wedge of graphite still mars the back of her thigh. In high school, she went on a date with a boy named Tommy Pasco, who told her he'd marry her if she found the song Light My Fire on the radio. And then she turned the dial and found it. And she raises her eyebrows and says, "He's a dentist now," like their date had something to do with it. My mom has slept with one man her whole life and has no idea that my Aunt Sharon told me the story about my dad putting his fist through the wall of a Niagara Falls hotel room on their honeymoon when my mom was too afraid to consummate their marriage. In one breath, she said she doesn't give a hang who anyone sleeps with. And then she calls my best friend a slut for having too many boyfriends. And that night, I go out of my way to sleep with a stranger. When I was little and bathed at night, my mom toweled me off and slipped a nightgown over my head. I'd lie in bed and she'd blow dry my hair until I fell asleep. When I was sick home from school, she'd sit on the edge of my bed and press her lips to my forehead to gauge my fever. Then she'd brush the hair off my forehead over and over until my bangs clung with static, because her mom had done the same to her. I got a helium balloon and wrote my name and address on it with a magic marker before walking into the front yard and releasing it into the air. My mom chased out behind me screaming, "What are you doing? You put your name on that balloon? Have you heard of Jack the Ripper? What if some sicko finds that thing?" When I thought I was walking home by myself, my mom was nearby, parked around the corner to make sure no one stole me. I rode my bike around the neighborhood and my mom followed at a stealth distance. While I checked repeatedly to make sure the plaster figurines in the manger under the Christmas tree had a good sightline of baby Jesus, my mom started about the 3 wise men and their gifts of gold, Frankenstein, and mirth. My dad and I screamed and laughed, and she told us to shut the hell up and that she wished she was so goddamn perfect as us. When my heart pounded and I shook and cried for no reason, my mom told me she used to stand in the field and scream every time a plane flew overhead, afraid the Cold War had turned into something else. When I started to count the steps and stairs, to press the center of my palms against everything I passed, and to pick at my clothing until I tore holes in my jeans and bit through my sweatshirts, she told me I wasn't crazy. When she was 22, she got a phone call saying her mom's heart gave out. I watched as cancer devoured 2 of her sisters, at a loss because nothing can afford an only child the intimacy of siblings. I watched as her world quaked when she realized her sisters weren't always right, and I felt my world shift when I realized she wasn't always right either. My mom knows who I was and who I might be. She thinks I'm better than I am, and that makes me feel good, even though I know that every crow thinks theirs is the blackest. When I came home with teenage heartbreak, she shook her head. "I don't know what's wrong with these boys. You knocked the spots off of all those other girls." And she says it now, when the other girls are married with babies and I'm by myself, wondering what's wrong with me. An old boyfriend of mine once pointed to a black once pointed to a framed black and white photo of my mom, a drape across her shoulders, pearls around her neck, her hair in a gidget flip. "You look beautiful," he said with a Russian accent. "But it's strange to keep photos of yourself, no?" At family reunions, second and third cousins rest their arms on my shoulders and say, "You've got to be Gail's. You could have been picked out of her ass with a darning needle." When I was younger, I wrinkled my face and shook my head, but now I say graciously, "Thank you."
All right, everyone. Thank you for being such a great audience. I know it's getting late. I just have a few thank yous and announcements before we close. I'd like to give a big thank you to the presenters tonight who were really brave to share their true stories with us. I'm really indebted to them. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and staying. I'd like to thank Emmy, even though she is going through an 8-month sleep regression and not sleeping through the night, she's still a good baby. And last but not least, I would like to thank Albert back there, the man behind Grumpy Bert. Not only is he juggling the shop, he pretty much watches Emmy every day so I can drink coffee and bitch on Facebook. He's the best father out there. So, and one final thing, we've been running Grumpy Bert and Lost Lit for over 4 years now. We're going on our 5th year this year. And this is after neighbors like to come in and say, "Hope you last a year." So we've held many arts-related community events on a zero budget. So if you're an arts lover, if you have a friend who read tonight or a loved one who read, or if you enjoyed it, please consider donating. We would like that very much. Or buy art. And that's it. So I'm done begging. We're going to kind of close up and have a little wine upstairs if you want to stay and chat with everyone. Thank you so much.